Genetics load the gun, personality aims it, and our experiences pull the trigger. Our experiences, especially those from our childhood, are critical in defining our future as they are in a way our roots, the very foundation of our personality. While the phase of our lives when we were young may come across as insignificant, it serves to determine almost everything about who we grow up to be, what we do, and how we deal with overwhelming situations in life. Karen Horney's groundbreaking theory of personality states that childhood social tensions are crucial for personality formation and that childhood anxiety caused by a dependent child's sense of helplessness triggers a desire for love and security. A significant case which portrays the same is that of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, whose mother feigned and induced fake illnesses in her so she could be a caretaker for a daughter she had misled into being dependent. She spent her entire life tricked into being diseased and was controlled and manipulated by the only person she thought she could always trust. Gypsy hired a man she met online to murder her mother Didi as she felt unsafe and terrified of her actions. Oftentimes, those with scarred childhoods and traumatic experiences grow up with personality disorders, such as OCD, schizophrenia, and the antisocial personality disorder, synonymous with the term psychopathy. Psychopaths have a slightly different brain structure than the average human. Parts of the brain responsible for emotional regulation and decision making underfunction in people with psychopathic tendencies. The Hare checklist lists some of the following as the externally visible symptoms of psychopathy: irresponsibility, narcissism, and competitiveness. People with antisocial personality disorder sometimes show some and even none of these symptoms. What we tend to ignore about personality disorders is the fact that a spectrum exists, ranging from those people who never show any criminalistic inclinations to those perpetrators we liberally refer to as monsters. There's a good chance you've encountered someone showcasing psychopathic deviance without even knowing it. As a matter of fact, around 5% of CEOs all over the world are psychopaths. It would be safe to say that capitalism is fueled by psychopathy. Several media persons, journalists, and lawyers can also be categorized as such. But do they all end up living the life of a serial killer? No, they don't. And this means that you wouldn't be able to spot a psychopath even if they walked past you, because they won't necessarily be holding a machete or gnawing on a piece of human flesh. The reason why we think of them this way is because of their portrayal in books, movies, and shows, such as Hannibal, Bates Motel, and Psycho. Most people with the antisocial personality disorder lead happy lives and have healthy relationships with other people who are well alive. So what is it that bridges the gap between these two worlds that may seem similar but are actually poles apart? Again, it's the childhood they've experienced and how they have been nurtured. Most deviants have had an abusive childhood, chaotic family life, lack of parental attention and guidance. As impressionable children, they develop an understanding from their parents that if they wanted love or attention from someone, they had to reach certain standards. As they grow up, this need for validation becomes a habit and sticks with them till adulthood, manifesting into scary alternate realities which compensate for their childhoods from hell. Certain people turn to bizarre crimes because they're shunned by the world around them. Their loneliness is so unimaginable that they create their own sadistic universe to requite all the abuse, neglect, and suffering that they have faced. They are a grey area in a world that is fascinated by the idea of black and white. For what they withstood while they were young is just as terrifying as their projection of this trauma onto others. Edmund Kemper, one of the most notorious yet highly intellectual serial killers, faced physical, verbal, emotional, and psychological abuse at the hands of his alcoholic mother and was often locked in a dark basement alone at night. Most of his crimes are manifestations aimed at regaining control over his own life. If we seek to understand the role of parents in his formative years, it could prevent the development of future Edmund Kempers. A recent study on the nature of serial killers revealed shocking statistics. Over 86.5% of serial killers have psychopathic tendencies, while over 36% have been physically abused, and over 50% of them have been psychologically abused. If there is something crucial that these statistics have brought light to, it is the attribute that children in this dynamic society often feel unloved, unwanted, or unworthy of a place in this world. It has never taken us long to throw out those that are trying so hard to fit in. With our unattainable expectations and inflexible norms, We often put an exorbitant amount of pressure on young minds at a time when peer pressure is the most overpowering constituent of the socialization process we all undergo. Although we continue to live in an overly simplistic world that feels the irrepressible need to view everything through a binary lens, where everyone is either good or evil, guilty or innocent, normal or abnormal, early child abuse can create individuals who spiral into destruction and violence in the hopes of restructuring their lives and shifting the power dynamic by no longer being a victim but a tormentor. Terming people as incorrigible is not the solution to an issue that has affected us for several centuries. Validating children's emotions while giving them a secure environment to freely express themselves and actively working against child abuse most definitely is. Therapy for adolescents has proven to be life-changing when it comes to anger management problems, the cultivation of self-esteem, and emotional stability. Each child is at risk of suffering in a world full of imperfect adults who constitute a society oblivious to their needs and fears. Child abuse and neglect isn't an evil that can't be prevented, something that is out of our hands. It is the result of purposeful humiliation, high performance pressure, and corporal punishment. Many abused children cling on to the hope that growing up will bring escape and freedom. But unexpressed emotions never die. They're buried alive and come forth in uglier ways. So are we, as a society, finally prepared to view villains for who they really are, simply wounded children?